Welcome to Four Questions, Blackmore 4's webcast, where we have the opportunity to engage with some inspiring leaders. Today, we have the pleasure of chatting to Sarah Henley, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer at Next Up Comedy, as well as the winner for the Women in Innovation Award for 2021. Sarah, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to chat to you today. Now, before we dive into our four questions, you have such a multi-textured career. So please just tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background.
Okay, well, yes, I've definitely taken the winding path, I always say, to where I've got to today. I left school and went into law originally. I worked in international arbitration and structured financial products at both a blue chip law firm and then Citibank, which is an absolute disaster for my mental health because I was definitely in the wrong place. But I did learn a lot. I then moved into the world of theatre and trained as a musical theatre performer. I started writing comedy, which is where I met my two co-founders of the company I'm working for now. And I also trained in NLP as a master practitioner and trainer. So I'd be a gun for hire and I'd go around management teams and youth projects and sort of train people in various things. And eventually I moved more into the world of comedy and ran a YouTube channel and live comedy night in London with these two guys, Dan and Kenny, who also run Next Up. And eventually we decided the time had come for us to do something proper with it. It was a bit of a hobby project. So we founded Next Up about 4 years ago.
Oh, that is amazing. Such an interesting career. Okay, so let's dive in. Question one goes like this. What has been your biggest challenge being a woman in a leadership role, especially since tech and comedy are notoriously male-dominated industries?
Yeah, this is a good question. And I think there's just loads of different answers to it because on the one hand, yes, comedy and tech are very male focused. And I've had some difficult evenings pitching where I've been the only woman and it feels weird. But I think a lot of that comes from, feeling like a minority in that sort of world. But for me, I'd say the biggest challenge has been the age at which I started the company has meant that I've had two babies during running the startup. And when you're a founder of a startup, it's really hard to bow out because the startup is also a baby. And so I'd say the biggest challenge for me has been trying to juggle those three babies and doing all of it to the best of my ability. And I think it's just naturally made it slightly more difficult. I haven't really had maternity leave. I haven't I've been attempting to do it all. And I think in some ways it makes you better as a manager and it makes you more empathetic. But in other ways, I think it's just frustrating when you see that your co-founder, who is a guy, has had his personal training session in the morning. He's been able to have a salad. He rocks up at the office at 10 and he's all fresh. And I'm like running in, sweating, covered in baby vomit and just ready to start the day. And I think it's just that sort of slightly different life experience that I have that feels quite stark in contrast to some of the other people engaged in the startup world. And I haven't really found a solution for it. But that has been a challenge.
And if there's anyone that understands, I get you. Okay, thank you for your honesty. Question two, what is your proudest moment in your career?
This is a nice question. And I think it actually came up really recently. Comedy's obviously just been opening back up again. And one of our big we've got a few really big goals within Next Up, but one of them is to digitize comedy venues and have them streaming live comedy to the app so that you can turn on your TV and watch comedy from the best clubs in the world. And we managed to do that last week. We had a gig at the Comedy Store, which is, it's like comedy church. It's one of the most important venues in the UK. And we'd booked the lineup. It was a very next up lineup where you'll often see just 3 white guys and an MC on a lineup. It was full of diversity, full of differences of opinions and backgrounds. And we streamed it, and it was just a real moment of like, I wasn't even involved in the booking or the partnership or anything. So as a leader, I was able to just go, okay, I created a team who have done this and made it happen. And I sat in the gig with my neighbour and his kid, it was his first ever comedy gig. He's 18. And I was like, we've done this. And it was just a really nice feeling, and it ran really smoothly. And yeah, it's sort of validation for all of the time we've spent getting to that point.
Yeah, I find it so interesting because usually if we ask a person their proudest moment, typically it's like, I created this and I did this and it's so interesting in true leadership form. You say that you recognized, the team that had put together this incredible thing. And that's amazing. That's leadership. It's not about me, it's about actually empowering others to execute such, and then seeing the fruition of your efforts, of your team's efforts. So beautiful example, beautiful. Okay, question 3, who inspires you and why?
I've got 2 for this one. One is a woman called Brené Brown, who you've probably heard of.
I love her.
Yeah. So she wrote a brilliant leadership book called Dare to Lead, but she's also written loads of other great books that are probably more in the personal development sphere. But I ran or introduced Dare to Lead to the team. And over the past year, we've been working through the sort of workbook and exercises with a different team member running it each month. And it's just been hugely impactful for us, and it's really gelled us as a team. And I think her work is amazing. And I really admire her because she's not wishy-washy like fluff, which I hate, but she understands the need for that sort of level of vulnerability and having real conversations, even though she doesn't like it. And I think so she comes from a very sort of space quite similar to me, where I hate it and I know it's needed. So I definitely I follow her quite religiously. I've read all her books, and I'm just like, okay, you speak to me in a way that some of the other management books don't. And the other one is Caroline Criado Perez, who wrote a book called Invisible Women, and she's an absolute don. Her book's all about the gender data gap, and she speaks to the fact that, like, crash test car dummies are all built for the male body, so more women die in car crashes. Jeez. Just universally, and how the whole world is built around these male structures. And it's just eye-opening. So she inspires me because she calls it out and she sees it everywhere. And in the way that I was talking about my biggest challenge being the fact that I've tried to have a baby and run a company, the childcare and the situation in this country is absolutely mental and very, very challenging. So she calls out those structures and sort of, raises the awareness of things that I wouldn't have even been aware of before. Yeah. And I think she's a really impressive woman.
That is amazing. So I just want to skip back to Brené Brown. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Culture Club by Daniel Coyle. All right. So male author, whatnot. There's no sort of feminine male themes or anything in the book. But what I found so interesting is the book speaks specifically about vulnerability in leadership and uses multiple case studies to demonstrate how powerful it is. And many a times I feel like, I don't know if you agree, but us as women, we want to be a man in a man's world. But in fact, if we draw into our feminine power, something like vulnerability, it's so, so powerful in the corporate context.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think for too long, even like, especially in this country, we see female politicians embodying that male persona, because that's how they feel they can get ahead or get along. And I think it's brave not to, and it does pay dividends. And I think in my experience, it's been really well received and well responded to. I think it might be women themselves who've taken on the need to be like that. And I think if we say, no, actually, there's another way, it in my experience has been responded to really well. So yeah, there's a lot of power there, I think.
Fabulous. All right, last question. Question 4. What advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders?
I would say get support. So I'm very lucky. I founded a company with two other, well, there's actually 3 others, but Stuart tends to sit as more of someone who introduces us to people. So there's 2 others working in the business full time. And that has really helped me in that I've had people to bounce ideas off and people to support me if I'm off sick, for example, or, you know, or if anything happens. And I think it can be very lonely being a founder at the top of a company when everyone's looking at you. And other ways I've done that is I've been involved in a women founders network called The Arena, run by a brilliant woman called Julia Elliott-Brown, and also the Google Women Founders Accelerator. And both of those networks have enabled me to meet other women who are in a similar position. And I think you can't really underestimate the learning potential and the power in having people to talk to about where you're at in your journey, who aren't necessarily your direct reports, because they don't want to hear that you're running out of money and they don't want to hear where you're at in your investment round, but you need someone to chat to on that level. So if it's not a co-founder, if you're in it on your own, then I think having a network can be really invaluable. So yeah, that would be, and people will be like, oh, have you thought about this funding opportunity? Have you thought about this? And that peer-to-peer learning is really important. And I've found that the women's groups, people are a lot more honest and a lot less brash in giving their CVs to you. They're much more willing to help and engage and share. It's not competitive in a way that where the mixed groups have been a bit more like, I am this person and I've done this and these are my achievements. The women's group seems to be more genuinely out there to help everyone succeed. So I'd say that that's a great thing about being a woman, and I definitely get a network.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I think also being in a network with other women, they understand what it's like to have babies and literally think to yourself, right, so am I going to go back to the world of work and basically either run a company and put all that money into childcare, or am I going to take time off? Things that I know we all know about it, but it's only truly women that experience that and can empathize with the plight of being an ambitious, career-driven woman who is a leader as well. So yeah. Sarah, it's been so inspiring chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being a leader that we can look up to as women and showing us that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to run in and not look fresh and be covered in baby vomit. And it's okay to be successful as well. So thank you. I've absolutely loved talking to you.
Thanks very much. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Sarah, we're going to keep an eye on you on social media. Go well.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.